Hello, Grapperinos, and welcome to another exciting episode of Probably Next Week on Raw. I'm Bryon, and joining me on the show is the one and only Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hello.
I guess the Tommaso Ciampa to my Johnny Gargano. You
I
like
don't
to
know
be
if they've ever billed him single. I mean, I don't think he's been in a singles match in a
only
while.
in
But
only in
the last
NXT,
time
yeah, maybe.
in NXT, yeah, the only times that I've seen him are in when I was fussing around with 2K, and he was billed from Milwaukee, and that was 2K23, I think. Yeah.
Wow,
And they finally billed him from Boston, which is correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
based
So I
on
was
this
happy about that.
Friday. Yeah.
Yes.
I
I was
could
happy about that.
also, since this is a Raw show, I could have just said that you are the Xavier Woods to the who was the other guy, Kofi Kingston, and
Big
also
E.
would have worked.
I'm kidding.
Big,
Big E.
I mean, Big E
Big
does
E.
the front desk stuff, so I guess he could also be here. But anyway,
Let
this
me let me see if let me see if
yeah,
the website actually has him listed correctly. They have it built correctly.
Tommaso Ciampa.
The
Yeah.
they don't. They don't build them on the website. Damn. I was hoping they would actually they would build them right. All right, whatever. I'm over that. Sorry.
All right. Well, in that case, this is a show where Mike and I try to book the next episode of Raw with announced matches and some of our own flair. And we are doing it according to the following rules. We can only use active superstars on their respective rosters with no crossover, which means that we cannot have SmackDown people go to Raw or vice versa. Non-active wrestlers can be used within the realm of possibility, so we can use people like RVD, maybe, but we cannot use someone like DDP, I guess. Our booking includes announced matches for next week with our predictions, and our booking can use any valid stipulation for any match that we book, aside from the announced matches because they're already announced. After our predictions and bookings are locked in, after the video is released, we are going to watch the next episode of Monday Night Raw, and we are going to tally up our points and our predictions based on how accurate they are using a patented points system that is scientifically accurate. For matches, 1 point for each person that's competing. I have basically just changed that from last week. So basically, if I predict 2 out of the 3 people that are competing in a match, that's 2 points for me. We also have 1 point for who wins that match and how, pinfall, DQ, submission, etc. That is simplified, and 1 point for the stipulation of the match. Promos, we have half a point for each person coming out, and 1 if that person comes out first, making it a promo segment centered on that person. For example, if I have, say, Jey Uso come out and do a promo, and he does, I get 1 point. But if Logan Paul comes out and Jey Uso comes out after him, I only get half a point. We also have 1 point for each topic that is talked about on that segment. Additionally, we have 1 point for the correct order of segments, and half a point if the predicted promo person is in a match and vice versa. So, for example, if Jey Uso is in a match instead of a promo, and I predicted that he would have a promo segment, then that would be half a point, and vice versa. Anything announced between the release of the video on YouTube and the beginning of Monday Night Raw counts towards the points, and backstage segments and any ad-free segments for the Netflix ad-free tier people do not count. So, let's get to the scores. Last week was a wash. I think I only got 1 point for Raw. I didn't get much correct, but Mike, I think you have 3. So
I did
overall,
have 3 points.
yeah,
Yes, I had 3 points, I believe, from the Jey Uso promo about Logan Paul.
yeah,
And I got most of my points from the AJ Styles and Penta feud, which I almost had as a perfect segment. It was just in the wrong spot, but I said that Judgment Day would win with interference from El Grande Americano, which they did. That's where I got most of my points. But we are very bad at Raw. I'm finding Raw hard to book than SmackDown. I think just because of especially coming off of like a PLE,
Yeah.
there's no time to actually think about stuff because you only have 1 or 2 days to book it. Like this morning, they just announced a match for Raw via Twitter. So
Yes.
it's difficult to book.
And also, we also predicted that Goldberg would come back and he didn't. So we are using at least the second rule to our, I guess, disadvantage early on. But I think later on we'll try to sort of incorporate some things. And honestly, I think we've settled into a groove where things could be predicted correctly from myself and Mike's standpoint. And hopefully we get some more points, maybe this next episode or the one after that. But we shall see as we build to Money in the Bank. But before we get to our versions, let's take a look at the announced matches. As Mike said, a couple of matches have been announced on Twitter, that being the Money in the Bank qualifying match between Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, and Sami Zayn. We also have another one for Money in the Bank between Penta, Dragon Lee, and Chad Gable. We also have the 2 announced matches from last week's episode of Raw, that being Creed Brothers versus New Day versus War Raiders for the World Tag Team Championships in a triple threat, and Rusev versus Akira Tozawa. So, without further ado, let's book this thing, starting off with my version of the show. We're going to have Seth Rollins come out and do a promo with his faction to be named. We'll call it the NWO Wolfpack. And he is going to come out and speak about their match at Saturday night's main event, saying that that was only the first step to their plan, winning that qualifying match and entering the Money in the Bank match and winning it and winning the briefcase. That is part of their plan for Raw domination. And he also talks about why Bronson Reed is instrumental to that plan and why he's in the faction, despite the fact, I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but Bronson Reed had a lot of tsunamis saved up for Seth Rollins, and he just pummeled him and sent Rollins to the hospital. So I'm not sure why he decided to join the faction. Maybe we'll get an explanation, but I think the reasoning behind it is that he hates Punk more than Rollins, maybe. And we will have, speaking of Punk comes out, speaks about the match at Saturday night's main event. They're going to brawl with the faction, and then Sami comes out to even the odds a bit. However, the power of Bronson Reed just takes over, and they just wreck Sami and Punk. And then Jey comes out to help. However, Seth Rollins' faction just cannot be stopped at this point with the power of Bronson Reed, and Seth Rollins' faction comes out on top as all 3 guys eat a lot of tsunamis from Bronson Reed. And then we'll have a couple backstage segments where the good guys recuperate, and the bad guys, or the heels rather, will try to at least have some sort of inspiration for the main event, or have some sort of strategy for the main event, which in my version of the show will be Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn in Money in the Bank qualifying match. That's that. Moving on to the next match, which is Rusev versus Akira Tozawa. I'm going to have Rusev win by submission. As stated in earlier episodes of this show, one of the predicted matches that I had, finally happening. And I will have Rusev win by submission. Nothing more to be said about that. Next, Money in the Bank qualifying match for the women as Ivy Nile takes on Maxine Dupree. And a returning Bayley. I'm going to have Bayley return here in a Money in the Bank qualifying match. And I'm gonna have Ivy Nile win by pinfall, despite the fact that Bayley did return, because we're gonna feed in Bayley back into the Becky Lynch storyline with Lyra. And we are going to do that by having Becky interfere and cost Bayley the match. Ivy Nile pins Maxine, maybe, by pinfall. And there you go. Ivy Nile goes to Money in the Bank by herself. And after that, we're going to have him brawl until backstage, I guess. And that's when Lyra comes out to do a promo. We're going to have Lyra talk about her title and who might be able to challenge for the title. And after the brawl between Becky and Bayley, Becky comes out, challenges her to a rematch and Money in the Bank, but this time there's going to be a stipulation. And that stipulation is going to be a cage match or a Hell in a Cell. So, cage match meaning steel cage. And the two brawl, and Lyra comes out on top, and a match is announced for Money in the Bank between Lyra and Becky for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. We're going to have it as a steel cage match. So, I don't know who comes out on top there. Maybe Lyra, and that will be the end of their feud, and Bayley can focus on Becky, and Lyra can go on to other things. Moving on to Creed Brothers versus New Day versus the War Raiders for the World Tag Team Championships. And I am going to have New Day win by pinfall. And we're going to have some intervention from the Creed Brothers and El Grande Americano and all that. But I think the New Day is going to win. Despite the fact that as heels, they've been kind of underwhelming. But I think New Day is going to just win here by pinfall, hitting one of the War Raiders. That's that. Moving on to another Money in the Bank qualifying match, as Penta takes on Dragon Lee and Chad Gable. Penta wins by pinfall here, in my honest opinion, as Dragon Lee has nowhere to go, and Chad Gable is tied to the whole tag team situation with Penta. But I think him interfering in the World Tag Team Championship match is going to cost him, as he changes back to his regular person. I know they're different people. But let's just speculate, okay? Let's just speculate. But Chad Gable is not going to win, in my opinion. I think they're pushing new people, and Penta is new, so might as well push him for Money in the Bank. So Penta wins by pinfall there. Next, all right. Remember last week where Roxanne Perez is part of the Judgment Day because she went, or kind of, I should say, because she went to the hideout and she offered Dominic Mysterio some chicken tendies, and she offered Carlito the apple. Well, there's only one member of that faction who is not impressed by all of this, aside from Finn, who is Raquel Rodriguez. I think they're going to have a backstage segment, another one, where Raquel talks to Roxanne and says, okay, you want to be a part of the faction? You want to be a part of the Judgment Day? You want to basically win Dom's trust and everybody's trust in the group? Well, you and me are going to be in a match together tonight. And if you beat me, you are going to be part of the group. And Roxanne accepts. And we're going to have Roxanne Perez versus Raquel Rodriguez here. And I am going to have Liv Morgan return here after she films her new movie. And she is going to just come out and attack Roxanne Perez, causing a DQ. And Raquel and Liv just pin Roxanne down, they beat her up, and they come out on top. That's it. They walk away after the beatdown. And that I will say is that Liv is back on the Judgment Day, in my opinion, and gonna have Roxanne, I guess, eat a DQ because I think they're just trying to not have her lose, and it's just some way to protect her, at least in this case. And finally, the main event, Finn Balor versus Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn. We're gonna have Seth Rollins win by pinfall because, again, the numbers advantage and they have a strategy going in, and Seth Rollins is going to win here by pinfall. I think they're gonna proceed with their plan. After that, a brawl again happens between Seth, Bronson Reed, Sammy, Jay, and Punk. Finn Balor just retreats to the Judgment Day hideout, I guess, with Dom and the rest of the Judgment Day, and we just see the brawl happen all around the arena as the show goes off the air. No one will know who won that brawl. So that I will say is that. Any questions, Mike?
I'm interested as to why you think they're gonna book Roxanne, and I know she's fooling around with the Judgment Day, but I'm interested as to why you think they're gonna book her in a feud so early.
Well, I think the whole point is that she wants to join the Judgment Day for, I guess, the name recognition and so that she can raise her stock. But you can already see some, not dissension, but some distrust between the members. And I think this is going to plant another seed into the whole distrust between Dominic Mysterio and Finn Balor. So I think putting this match on the show would be great to not only fuel that, but to also get Roxanne on the show. And honestly, I think this is where they're gonna go. And I wouldn't really have Roxanne just, I don't know, sit there and not do that much, considering the backstage segment last week. So I want Roxanne versus Raquel. I think they're gonna do it. And this will plant some seeds into Dominic versus Finn when that happens. And we're gonna have, I guess, some dissension between Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, because she's gonna be like, "Who the hell is this woman? And why is she here? Dom, is this you? Did you do this, or did Finn do this?" So this is going to definitely feed into some Judgment Day shenanigans and their fallout. And again, might as well put her on the show. Raquel has not much to do, so might as well put her on the show as well.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right?
Have you noticed that both members of Seth Rollins' group have the first name Braun?
Yes.
Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker.
Oh my god. If they have a
It's
fourth
Seth and
man,
Braun's.
if they have a fourth man, his name is Braun Strowman.
Well,
So we
he's gone
have.
already, unfortunately.
Oh, he is gone, yeah. But if he wasn't, he would be in the group. What if what if the group name, well, I think it's your suggestion, or it was your suggestion, but what if the group name was Seth and the Bronze? And I think that that would have made a pretty good name, but I don't think they're gonna go with it. Now, my guess would probably be Pure Fusion Collective, but you know, that's that's a
It's a
whole
very
nother
interesting
story.
name.
It would be, yeah. The Seth Rollins being like, "We are the Pure Fusion Collective, and we are here to take over Monday Night Raw." Sounds pretty intimidating to me. I'll say that. Yeah. Any other questions, or should we move on to your version?
We can
You
go on
know.
to my card. I think
All
I think
right.
it's a pretty good card. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Seth Rollins.
Yeah, so I start with a similar promo. Seth Rollins comes out, tells us why Bronson Reed joined. He comes out with Bronson Reed, actually. And he says basically the same thing that Bryan suggested, that part of the plan is that he'll enter Money in the Bank by winning tonight. Jay comes out and interrupts this promo, saying, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll still win regardless, even if you win Money in the Bank. And they start a brawl. Sammy and CM Punk come to help out Jay, and they end up on top.
So you're gonna have the good guys on top instead of Seth.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At least there's something different there. The reason why I had the bad guys on top is because I wanted to, once again, show the power of Bronson Reed to the audience one more time. And I might as well show them that Bronson Reed is a legit sort of third guy and just as powerful as the other members. But if you think having the good guys go out on top is reasonable, or you think that's what they're gonna do, then that's fine, I guess.
I have Seth winning the Money in the Bank match
Oh, okay.
via interference from his group. That's why I have the good guys on top in the beginning. I do agree that you need to book Bronson Reed as a monster, but we can do that next week.
Okay.
I don't think Bronson Reed has much for this week. I almost was going to book him in a match, but then I realized Sami Zayn is already in a match tonight.
Yeah.
So,
All right, I see. Okay. Moving on to again, there were no Money in the Bank qualifier graphics because it was announced on Twitter, so we are rolling with the JPEGs for this one. So
yeah, I have Penta winning and pinning Dragon Lee. The reason I have is I think you do want to protect. I guess you can have this be either direction. I guess it doesn't matter really, now that I think about it. I think they want to protect Chad Gable and save him for a potential IEC title in the near future. That's where I think he's going with this anti-luchador crusade. I think that one of them eventually wins it off of Dom,
okay.
and then he goes after them. But I think Penta, you're right. Penta is being booked extremely hot right now. He is insanely over, and I think he wins this clean via pinfall.
All right. Interesting that they put Chad Gable on here and not El Grande Americano. That to me is sacrilege. How can they just take a newcomer like El Grande Americano out of the card and put Chad Gable on? That is extremely disgusting. And management should be ashamed of themselves by not putting El Grande Americano here. And you have two luchadors. So
I could 100% see Chad Gable pulling the sick card again and busting out El Grande Americano.
that could be the play as well. Just have that in a backstage segment or something.
Yeah.
And yeah. Okay. Interesting, interesting. All right, moving on.
I have Rusev going over on this one. I think Chizawa puts up more of a fight than people are expecting. This is definitely a David and Goliath situation here.
Yeah.
I don't think Chizawa gets squashed. I do think Rusev wins quite handedly, but I think Tozawa puts up more of a fight than people are expecting. And I would like them to book Tozawa in. I mean, just my personal opinion. I don't think they're going to do this because they don't want to do anything with. Wow, why am I forgetting the action name? Probably because they haven't been relevant since Chad Gable left them.
Alpha Academy.
Alpha Academy. Thank you. I don't think they're going to book him any higher, but he does have some. You'll see it tonight. He actually has stuff in his bag, and I
Yeah.
think he is kind of underrated and being reduced to a comedy gimmick, which whatever pays the bills, I guess. But I think Rusev wins. Tozawa puts up a fight, but Rusev wins quite handily, and he gets booked to a mid card feud.
Yeah, I do agree with you that hopefully this match goes like what 10, 15 minutes as we said last week or maybe even the week before that when we talked about this. But I think if they book Akira Tozawa to be this sort of underdog who has to fight, scratch and claw, only to be just decimated by the power of Rusev over the course of the match, if they tell that story correctly and properly, then I think this is definitely going to go well for both guys in terms of just building them up. And I will say this with the comedy gimmick, at least Akira Tozawa is being featured more than Shinsuke. So, like, at least
That is true.
Akira, yeah, at least Akira is being featured better than Shinsuke Nakamura, which may be sad, maybe not sad, depending on your point of view, but that is a fact to consider. But moving on to Becky Lynch.
Yeah, I have Becky Lynch coming out. Because last week she said he actually met up with Io Sky in a backstage segment, telling her that she had already taken out one champion and she wants to go after Io Sky. I think they book a Io Sky versus Becky Lynch fight for Money in the Bank, and I think this is what the promo is about. Why do I not have her going up against Bayley? I think you save that for SummerSlam. That's a much bigger draw than Money in the Bank will allow for, and I think we save that match for SummerSlam. Because remember, Money in the Bank is mainly the two matches because they go pretty long. You don't have much else that you can fit into that card. You already have Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso versus Logan Paul for some fucking reason,
and John Cena. Yes,
John Cena. Yeah, I don't know. Logan Paul to me just seemed like a random bystander who just got roped up in the fight. It's like it's us two versus you two, and Logan's like, "Why you say fuck me for?"
Okay, so I think I saw. So there was a segment in Saturday Night's Main Event where John Cena goes up to Jey Uso and is like, "You're a good champion. Such a shame it would be if you lost your title to a YouTuber." And I guess they got beef now. And I guess you could also say that John Cena was eliminated by Jey Uso in the Royal Rumble, and that's how Jey
That
Uso
is
won.
true. That is true. Yes.
So that's probably why they're putting this. But it does seem like it does seem like Logan Paul is just a bystander. It's just like, why the hell am I in this situation? Except for I was a challenger for Jey Uso's title. Anyway, anything else you want to say about Becky Lynch before we move on?
Nope.
I don't think I have. Moving on.
I think I booked this before and didn't happen.
I think you have.
This
yeah.
is another. Yeah, this is another situation where I repeat a match on Raw.
This is now a set of demands for Triple H. Be like, hey, book this, please. So
The only difference I have in this one is Bayley doesn't come back yet. I totally forgot Bayley was in Raw, and I probably would have had her in this if I remembered she was on Raw, even though she's on the roster as listed, and I didn't see her. But I think they finally call up Stephanie Vaquer. How do you pronounce the last name?
Vaquer.
Vaquer.
You pronounced it right the first time last week when you pitched this.
I think she comes out, and they finally decide they want to move her up to Raw. I know she's currently the women's champion in NXT.
I think that's over. I think someone else is. If I'm wrong, I don't know. I don't watch NXT. Sorry, Sean.
Me either. Let me do a fact check.
All right, let's do it.
A fact check.
Check it.
There's a lot of people on NXT. Wow.
I'm pretty sure the NXT roster is like 80% women and 20%
She is
men.
the women's champion. Yes, he is the women's. She is the women's champion.
Oh, in NXT. Okay.
Yes. So I think she comes out. She doesn't win this. I think Maxine. Sorry, I think Ivy Nile wins this. Obviously, but
okay. Yeah.
I think she eventually gets called to Raw because they have a very limited roster.
Yes, they could use more women.
They could use more women.
Come on, Sean. Just give your woman away, man. What are you doing? You got a lot of women on NXT, bro. Give it to them. Or at least one of them. Sol Ruka. I know her. I know her as in I know that she's in NXT and she's doing pretty fine. So just give it to her, I guess, and just center it around her. There you go, Sean. Here's your booking idea. But I agree with what you said about that. Moving on.
The tag team triple threat between War Raiders, New Day, and Creed Brothers. I think the New Day retain thanks to some shenanigans. I think the New Day probably retain these titles until at least SummerSlam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who do you think would get those titles then from the New Day?
Probably
Either one of the
the
four teams in Raw's tag team division.
one of the four teams in the Raw tag team division.
We're gonna
It
put
seems
air
like this,
quotes.
they're doing a lot more with the SmackDown tag teams than they are with the Raw tag teams. Like, it really seems like every tag team on SmackDown can win the titles, and Raw, it's like, well, you got the War Raiders and New Day, and then
American
the other
made.
two, the other
Al-
two.
Alpha freaking Academy. LWO. Like, come on,
Well,
guys.
technically, you have A Town Down Under, but they're not a thing anymore.
You're gonna break them up, which is a shame.
Yeah, I think it's probably gonna go to maybe you do it with the Seth Rollins team.
Oh,
Maybe you have Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed go after the titles. Maybe
that would
Seth Rollins.
actually.
Seth
Yeah.
Rollins wins Money in the. I know I said LA Knight probably wins Money in the Bank, but Seth Rollins wins Money in the Bank. He goes after Jay, wins title, and then you have Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed win the titles, and then you have a Evolution situation where they hold all of the gold for men on Raw.
Well, you're forgetting the IC championship.
No one cares about the IC championship.
That's because Dom is holding it, man. And he is stuck in a situation with two women. That's more
What a
important to
shame! I
him.
feel so terrible for Dominic Mysterio.
Come on, man. I
So bad
mean,
for him.
which woman will Dom choose? Find out in the next episode. Apparently, that's more important than the IC championship. Which woman Dom pick between Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez? Moving on to the main event, or what you
Main
think is the main
event.
event.
We have a lot of similar cards, but
We do, yeah.
I think that's because 3 out of 7/8 of the matches and segments were already booked. So
Yeah.
I think Seth wins with interference from his faction.
NWO
And
Wolfpack.
yes, there's interference from his faction. I think there is a brawl that happens after the match with Sami Zayn, CM Punk coming down, Jey Uso coming down. I don't know if Finn. I don't think the Judgment Day get involved in Finn Balor's fight. I think he has another instance where he's like, "I don't need any of you," and then he loses.
And then he blames
So
the Judgment Day for him losing. And then
probably, yeah.
and then he's like, all is well. Just like
And next week,
every
all is
other
well.
like every other week. Come on, Finn. You're better than
I
that.
think Seth wins and goes on to Money in the Bank. I still think LA Knight wins Money in the Bank, though.
Interesting.
I still think they want to go, well, yeah, I still think that happens because I think John Cena loses probably at next. Well, actually, no, he wouldn't because it's yeah. I think he loses probably at Survivor Series, and then you have LA Knight who can deal with whoever the fuck the champion is after that.
Yeah. I think we saw Cody Rhodes return. So I don't know if Cody would again, we can reserve this for SmackDown. This is more of a SmackDown thing.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah. Cody Rhodes came back, did a speech at Money in the Bank. It was all over in a blink of an eye. And it was at the end of Saturday night's main event, which, okay, I will say something about another thing, I should say, about not Money in the Bank, Saturday night's main event, which is that apparently, remember how Saturday night's main event had a lot of commercials? It turns out that the commercials were overdone in this episode because you would see wrestlers do 3 moves and then you would cut the commercial and then it would come back. Wrestler does 4 moves and then cut the commercial. And then it's just a commercial fest, honestly. And there wasn't a lot of wrestling apparently. And the live crowd got more of that whole wrestling thing than those of us at home if you were to see it. So I don't know.
It's the old soccer phenomenon where, or the soccer principle, or I guess football principle for Europeans,
Where the more ads that are visible on the screen during gameplay means less ads that play during the actual show. There weren't any ads in the ring, so they had to make up for that with
Yeah.
an ad every 2 minutes.
That's right. But hey, I hope that the audience had some great times with that price of seating. So there you go. They got all of it without any commercials whatsoever. So hope they enjoyed it. And with that, I hope you enjoy this episode. It was kind of a brisk one, but with the fact that Saturday night's main event is kind of obvious in terms of the booking and in terms of what we think is going to be ahead, with what Mike said was the announced matches, or a lot of announced matches for next episode. Our booking is, it has some slight differences as Mike said, but there are some similarities. In fact, a lot of similarities. So we are going to watch the next episode of Monday Night Raw and tally up our points based on our predictions and bookings. And for now, thank you for ordering a pepperoni pizza from Grapperinos. And remember, if you're down for some fresh, oven-baked, crispy wrestling content, then stop on by at Grapperinos and order yourself some content you can grapple with. See you next time, Grapperinos.